hello. Aha, here we are. Let's start again then. So yeah, my mic wasn't working for the first few seconds. So what I was just saying is I want to make this stream mostly about alts, quickly on Bitcoin and Ether, mainly because we haven't got much movement and the high time frames, all the analysis I've done before remains the same. And then I'm still sort of waiting. I mean, we're very close to kind of where I wanted to look for longs on Bitcoin as the next level, and maybe we've just slightly front run that today, who knows, but I still need to see a little bit more. Kang, in response to your comment, was the gap at sub 1k. I'm not sure if you're referring to Bitcoin or Ether. I hope you're referring to Ether. I mean, there might well be a gap at 1k on Bitcoin, not sure. But Ether, let me have a quick look at where the gaps are. Yes. So, gap at 1194. So not sub 1k, but not far off. And with Ether, as you know, I've said before that we've taken out this high. So well, maybe we didn't quite on CME, but we did on the normal charts. So the expectation is potentially to take out this low, or certainly that low. So we'll see. Anyway, I won't digress too much. So on the low time frame chart, I haven't really been doing a great deal. I didn't have formal alerts for shorts in here, but we were just talking about it in the chat. So I've just put the question marks there just so you can see where they are. But yeah, I just commented, we were commenting when this was coming up, you know, whether this was the bottom. And for me, it was like, well, no, probably not. But I've said be wary of the fact that we're both now coming into 8-hour supply, which then proceeded to be the top. On Ether, I then did have an entry, which I think I've added since the last stream, on the 4-hour demand. So I didn't really want to have an entry here previously because I didn't think it was going to line up with where Bitcoin was. And I thought Bitcoin was going to break the low here, or the equivalent low from the 6th of June. And when we were coming down, I kind of thought, well, Ether isn't going to hold this. If at higher levels, Ether wasn't going to hold that. But then Bitcoin sort of overtook. We had a bit of a bounce on the Ether BTC pair. And therefore, I then kind of thought, actually, we might get confluence with Ether making a higher low on 4-hour demand here and Bitcoin taking out this low, which again did happen. But it was... obviously, it didn't come down into my box at that point, and I still wanted it in the box, so I just said to the group, kind of just watch out for that. What else? Yeah, that's pretty much it, low time frame. And then similarly, both. So what we had on both of these, they both made daily supply the day before yesterday, so I did have the possibility of short entries that I had alerted on those. The Bitcoin one was a little bit higher at 4-hour supply inside the daily. Neither of them got hit. I mean, even if I'd been more conservative on Bitcoin, still didn't hit the daily level. Then yesterday, everything made 5-day supply. So again, I didn't have a chance to alert this, but it was just a comment in the channel. Just again, be wary. Made 5-day supply. And it was, you know, it was a bit of a difficult one because both of them came off. I think Ether at least went up to 8-hour inside the 5-day, but Bitcoin literally just came off the bottom of the 5-day. And these are pretty hard trades to take, you know, given we're in a major demand zone. Do you want to be shorting what might potentially be the bottom? So I'm not really sure. But either way, we rejected off that 5-day. The 5-day is now played out for the lower low on Bitcoin. And has at least taken out yesterday's low, which created that 5-day on Ether, although potentially could go lower there as well. I'll go back onto the high time frame chart so you can see the box. So again, just recall that this is what I wanted. So typically Bitcoin will do a failed wave at tops and bottoms, and a failed wave by, at least by harmonic, Scott Carney's definitions, is the 113 fib extension. And I've shown this quite a few times in the past on charts, but it's similar to what we see here. If I do a fib, just change it to the right level. So this went a bit deeper, or maybe it didn't on the linear scale. So the 113 is typically what it is. However, crypto does like to outperform, so I tend to do it between the 113 and 127. In this case, it went to the 127. But so it makes its last move, it takes that out, stop hunts, and then retraces. And there's quite a lot of these on the chart. particularly at tops. So if you fib some of these tops, you'll see, and you know, typically tops and bottoms are going to stop hunt. So what I was looking for, sorry, I just flipped up too high a time frame, but what I was looking for here, and I actually also looked for it here, but we were a little too early on that. Not surprising, because we thought we were going to come down into this monthly demand anyway, but it's similar here to what I just showed you at the bottom, that we've come up, and are we going to fall down into the 113 to 127 fib area in this black box? So similarly, we've got the 61 fib is of the entire up move is at the same level. So that's a decent potential level to look for a bounce anyway. And at the moment, we've kind of bounced just slightly above there. And Bitcoin, so hopefully this won't be a front run of my front run entry. But you never know. But we still need to see a lot more anyway. We made a weekly supply in here. That was the other thing I hadn't commented before, actually, that we made a weekly supply by a hair. So when we had the fake move on Monday, I was saying in the group, don't trust Mondays for a start, but also that we were going right up into weekly supply, and hence why there was a decent short off that 8-hour test there. Anyway, I digress. So this is the black box of 113 to 127 fib, and then my other entries are from yearly demand downwards. So if we start running through here, then that's where you're looking at the 46,200 mark and below. Obviously, yearly demand is a big zone. Of note, I guess, is that Bitcoin never actually has tested the yearly demand before. So go back onto the log scale so it looks slightly cleaner. But yeah, yearly demand here, front ran it by about 2K on the low in 2022. So again, maybe we'll find that the case is the same here. Maybe we're not actually going to hit that yearly demand. But there are some differences in the structures and different things that are going on in TradFi overall. So but anyway, we're very close to the box now and the possibility of a failed wave. Obviously, it doesn't have to be the 113 to 127 exactly, so we just need to start to see any signs of this changing. The other things that are really critical to be looking at now is we have, 5 days left till month end. So we need to see if we're going to make 2 months supply, 1 month supply, 6 months supply on many things. And I think Bitcoin is the 2 months. So just take my mess off the chart so you can see. So yeah, if we close below roughly 67K, we are going to make a 2 month supply, and then I'll be looking for potentially for short entries off that. But yeah, all your charts now you should be looking at. There's nothing on the monthly particularly, there's already a monthly up the top. And I think there's nothing significant on the 3 or 6 month other than these. So we already had, you can see that we closed underneath that 3 month level, and it just had that instant tap off there before falling. So yeah, just need to be conscious of that, and on all the charts, start looking at where your monthly and your 1, 2, 3 and 6 month levels are going to be. So that's also one of the reasons I've been a little bit quiet, because I've been running through a gazillion alts, not unfortunately in any really decent structural order, but which I need to improve on. Yeah, I've been running through all the alts and adding those zones in, and also really, really mixed. And yeah, with some, like most are hugely bearish, but there are some that are bullish, and there are some that will make major demands. The difficulty I have is even the ones that have made major demands are very possibly just going to run straight back through. Like we've seen quite a few major crashes which just go through all demand. You know, things have been crawling up, and I don't know if they're delistings because I haven't checked all of them. But US dollar was one of the ones that crashed yesterday and ran through a whole number of zones. And sometimes they retrace, but other times I don't know. I think they just drift to death. I don't necessarily go back and look at all of them. Anyway, let's not digress too much. So that's Bitcoin, still not looking great. The US dollar dominance pair obviously is now pushing, hasn't quite taken out the high yet. Difficult on these because the wicks sometimes change a little bit depending on which time frame you're looking at, because it's a calculated metric. But yeah, obviously this is still running for now. Made 2 week demand, might make a 2 month demand in there, similar to Bitcoin. So I guess we just need to see a little bit more from that. Not much more to say on that. Not much more to say on so CME's just hit a 2 day level there. Again, there was some confluence with the box on that there, and the Korea pair isn't ideal because of the wick either. But again, the 2-month level on that is a little bit lower. So the US dollar pair has drifted more into the zone due to the strength of the US dollar over the last month or so. Whereas the Korea pair is holding a little bit higher at this stage. So that could be more interesting, and we need to see if it will make the 2-month supply on the Korean pair as well. Right, what else? I was going to quickly look at the data, actually, so I can shut the thing as well. Shut the Chrome to make sure my internet copes with the stream. ETF, we had some ETF buying, early to mid-June, second week of June. Didn't last, unfortunately. It was on BlackRock only, pretty much, or maybe it was a little bit, one day of a little bit, but really small in the grand scheme of things. But the selling has really picked up, and really picked up heavily again yesterday across all the ETFs. So that's not ideal. Ether, similar, but less. So Ether, the selling has dropped off, but maybe they just don't have any left. Not really sure about that. Haven't looked at Solana recently, so it's just pretty, not much going on Solana. And the other one was Hype. So Hype is a new one. A new ETF data set and flow on Farside Investors, where I look at the data. Pretty much zeros on that as well, but I found it kind of interesting to see that Hype was in this now. The other thing I was looking at earlier was some of the data on the walls, mainly because I wanted to see if we were going to get a bounce in my box or whether the walls supported that. What I then realised is virtually all data has now disappeared. So Trading Light, which has been up and down for the better part of a year anyway, has went down permanently, well, arguably permanently for about 3 months ago, and hasn't been back since then, so I'm calling it permanent now. Tensor Charts, bad gateway. So I was like, we're doing really well. On the plus side, we have CoinGlass, which now has extra data and for free. So I'd recommend going to look at CoinGlass and seeing what they've got on there, because there is a lot of data, so you've got to know what you're looking for. So on this one, I have large trades and also the walls, the liquidity heat map. So you can see the 58k, we had an exact bounce on 58k on Coinbase, 58,115 on Binance, 58,042 and 58,030 on the perps, Binance and Bybit. There hasn't been any large trades go in on spot, but there have been, because you can see, sorry that it's difficult with the floating thing, but you can see from this last down move, you see the large circles, and you can see on the chart above here, where they had large orders going in green and red, respectively, for longs or buys and sells. And there's a lot more, obviously, on the perps chart, on Binance particularly there. However, I'm more interested in those generally on the spot charts, because are the large buyers coming in at the lows, and so far we're not seeing that. We did see that on the last drop, but we're not seeing it today, so that's of interest. The other option that you can look at, there's two others in fact. So there's this one, mmt.gg. So I won't log in there now. I think I was less inclined towards that one. I think there's more, and maybe it was more complex to set up, or there's more payment required, but that's something you can look at. And the other one is kioitaka.ai, which is this one. And it wants me to upgrade so I can interact with it, but I can't save changes. But I think I set this up, so I'm not sure exactly what the criteria is. I haven't paid for this either, but I just opened this up in the absence of having the others for Confluence on looking where the walls are. So again, 52, you can see all the sort of same prices and the walls on these charts. So that's another option. I think I've got the same Binance, Bybit futures on the bottom, and Coinbase Binance. They're not in the same order, just to be awkward, but similar data I've got on these. It hasn't got the large trades. Because you still need to test all these out as well to see where the data is accurate or most accurate. But yeah, mainly I was looking at these to the walls earlier. I haven't looked much at liquidations lately, so I won't go into that. But I might just shut this down so I've got more bandwidth. Shut down for me, or what did I just shut? I did shut it. Okay, anyway, back to the usual layout. On Confluence, one of the other things I was looking at, there were a couple of things actually. One that failed, comments I made that won't have worked in reality. But MicroStrategy was one of the ones I posted in the channel. Look, I was wondering why I haven't got any pictures on this, but then I realized because it's gone through, so I would have deleted them all. Anyway, so yeah, MicroStrategy, I posted it in the Telegram channel yesterday. Oh no, I do have some lines. Here we go. That is taking a while to load. Yeah, so I posted this MicroStrategy in the Telegram channel yesterday, just saying be careful, because this was showing that signs are starting to break down. Obviously, you can see it's still got some way to go if it's going to make it to support. I mean, yeah, maybe it'll pick up wicks or something over here, but I tend to not work on that idea. I want this down in this area, and you can see the 61 fib over here lines up quite nicely with the yearly level. So for me, 56 on this would be a pretty nice place to look for long if you're trading this, and or confluence on Bitcoin. But again, you can see it's a very nice head and shoulders, really fairly clean and broken down from there. Yeah, so 71 would be the absolute earliest when it hits weekly demand there. Then there's monthly, 6 monthly and yearly demand at the 61 fib. So yeah, all up, I would say this is not ideal. Hold on, let me just check my stream is okay. My vertical stream seems to be lagging a bit, so if you're on the vertical, maybe go to the landscape, because it might be a little bit better. Don't know why, since I've got virtually nothing open. It's kind of annoying. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so nice head and shoulders here. But yeah, if you're looking for entries on Bitcoin, be conscious that the confluence isn't there on some other things yet. Similarly, I think Grayscale, which looks quite similar to, I know that's IBIT, that's Grayscale, here we go. Yeah, I was mapping out just distances on this, so we had an 87% drop, 90% drop, 87% drop, and then to get down to annual demand on this is still 78% drop. Well, no, sorry, the annual demand is higher, it's sort of up here, but then if it retraced a significant amount of this up move, that would be an 80% drop. So I was just sort of mapping out the distances more than anything. Again, you know, it could still cling to a higher low here, but it doesn't look overly pretty. And yeah, then even looking at the IBIT chart, that looks significantly worse. Like I was really wanting this to hold there, really, but it couldn't even get up to 3 months supply. So that's also not very attractive. I wonder what the fib is. Obviously, it hasn't held the 61 fib of the immediate move. The 61 fib is kind of in that area now. Just because this wave retraced exactly to the 61 fib, it was worth looking to see if this would, but it did not. Anyway, what else? From a confluence perspective, I'll quickly run through the market cap charts in a moment. Yeah, the only other thing I was looking at was gold BTC, and one of the things I'd said was maybe we'd get a pump on Bitcoin, because this, at the time, I said this a few days ago, was, you know, holding weekly demand, looked like it might get a bit of a bounce. Let's go on to the lower time frame. I think here making the higher low, 5-day supply not ideal, right above it. But I sort of said, okay, well, if gold can bounce here and hold this weekly demand, which it still might do, that would be nice for gold. But then what was the argument? Oh yeah, that gold, Bitcoin, that this chart would then have the potential of retracing down to here as it was coming down. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened. It's kind of just held that as support and bounced from there. But I was saying, if gold is looking bullish, and this chart is set to retrace down here somewhere, you know, even if it holds there, we need to do that, and gold is looking bullish, but gold BTC is looking bearish, then you would expect a pump on Bitcoin. Unfortunately, it hasn't done that, and it's gone up either for a retest before doing that drop, but we need to see. But that obviously wasn't a very useful piece of analysis anyway. Then I think I've had a quick skim through all the other stocks related to Bitcoin and things. So Coinbase and I think a couple of the others are looking pretty bearish and similar to the MicroStrategy chart, but then others of them are really strong. So again, the confluence isn't there compared to how it has previously. So HUT obviously making a new all-time high and not really caring about Bitcoin. And to be fair, I don't know the ins and outs of these companies. Like I don't know, what other business they have and how affected they are with Bitcoin. Just historically, I mean, maybe not HUT, but like Mara, Riot, Bitto, and Coin all tend to follow Bitcoin. But even now, you can see that Mara is just ticking upwards and not really following what Bitcoin's doing at all. So again, not very useful information. And so anyway, I'll move on quickly to the market cap pairs. Just a quick one also on USDC. So while we've got USDT dominance breaking all-time high, as I've commented before, USDC is only at a daily, it's not one I use heaps, this chart. However, it's one I keep wanting to keep an eye on, because so I've always used the tether dominance chart, but I don't know how valuable this is. Whether it's more or less valuable than the tether chart, I'm not sure, but I know a lot of people started moving away from tether, but this is still only 3.6%, whereas tether is still 9%. So tether is still a larger proportion, but more started moving into USDC, particularly when the BNB, can't remember what the name of the BNB US dollar offering went away. More people started going into USDC, but I guess maybe the tether's still probably more reliable because it's got 9% of the market versus 3% of this. Alternatively, we've got stablecoin dominance, but unfortunately I haven't got any more because of the deletion of the original data they have. But I can tell obviously that's in 3 months supply as well. So anyway, for now, still relying on the tether dominance chart. Moving on, we've got total, which obviously is already in yearly demand, and is just dropping inside that. Rejected our 3-month supply, so not much different, and still with the 2-month supply, so not much different to Bitcoin at all, but is now in the next demand on this chart anyway. Total 2, which is the one that's more slanted towards Ether, also slowly coming down. It looks significantly better than Ether, actually, and Ether's kind of down here in equivalent terms, isn't it? Let me just check. Being crazy. Yeah. And so Ether came back into that. So yeah, so this is obviously this chart. This chart is also taking into account all the other rules as well. So it's not as closely aligned with Ether as with Ether's, like the intricacies of Ether as it has been previously. So this obviously came up, and then the Ether chart came all the way back down into here, went up again, and then the Ether chart isn't all the way back down into here. Not sure when these two bumps, but that's basically where we're at on that. So this is still a bit stronger because it's being held up by some of the other alts. However, again, looking dangerous. Got the taking out of that high up there. This high. Are we going to come down and take out those lows and get back down into that demand down there ultimately? In the meantime, these are better zones to be looking for longs, not really where we are now. So yeah, there's nothing new in these charts that I haven't said before. Obviously, there's interim levels where we may get a bounce. I've debated also the realism of saying things like, total 3 market cap, is it going to go back to 200 billion from 600 billion, or has enough money flowed out of alts already? I don't know if that's a realistic assumption from a fundamental perspective. So maybe it's not realistic to say it'll go back down to 200, but from a chart perspective, these are the things I would expect. Again, nothing mind-blowing here. Taken out this high twice, expect to take out that low. This low isn't even in demand here. If this low had hit this zone, that would be better, but it hasn't. So my preference on this is that this does ultimately, whether it bounces and takes 10 years to do it possibly, but it will ultimately comes back down at least to that level, if not lower. Be ideal for entries in the bigger picture, long entries, and it would be horrible for the market. So let's just see what happens. In the meantime, 2-month demand it's coming into here. It's got a little bit lower. It can go. Now others again still taking its time, falling off the edge of the cliff that I want it to fall off. 5 multiple hits on this demand, nothing changed there. Still would like this at least there, and that would be the equivalent to where Ether is, if not in the annual demand down there, which again would be pretty horrible, and might need maybe we'll need a Binance hack or something to achieve that. I don't know, we shall see. But either way, I'm still bearish on this. I still don't want to look for macro longs on anything particularly, on any alts particularly, until this gets down to actually a decent zone. So the alert here is for the weekly, but it does have 2 weekly, 3 weekly, and 3-month levels all through here. So you can wick down into that area, but really I'm looking for that to show me a bounce before looking for longs on the alt market. Total DeFi much the same. Again, still clinging on. It had a few more wicks below this level, this monthly zone. Now I've got a 3-day demand still dripping back down into that. Again, want that down there and have an alert set on that 3-month level there. Total E100. So I talked previously again about maybe we'd get a swing fail and bounce here, but it would still need to make it up past supply. So obviously hasn't managed to make it up past supply. You can see my attempted green screen behind me on the back of my chair keeps coming into view. My camera's changed its format. I had to redo a whole load of stuff, so I'm going to have to fix that for the next stream. But for now, you can see me sitting on a green background. Anyway, total E100. I wanted, obviously, yeah, so we had the possibility of a swing fail here, but we needed to see some strength on this, and it needs to get through supply if that's going to be a stop hunt. We didn't get that. We just went up to daily supply and then made weekly, and again now dropping. So next zone for this, I think there's a monthly there. I've got the alert on the 3-month and the 61 fib. So again, still, so you can see on all of these, I'm still looking for that extra drop. I mean, it'd be lovely if Bitcoin bounces sooner and we get the drop on alts because Bitcoin's bouncing, but I don't know. We shall have to see. Bitcoin dominance, again, just sideways right now. Not much I want to comment on that. I think they had 3-month supply and it went really high inside it, but still 3-month supply and might make a 2-month depending on the close. So again, another critical close. Ether dominance was difficult, and I'll get onto Ether in a minute, but it hit this monthly demand here, whereas Ether BTC hasn't. It's sort of relatively lower. But so I was wondering if we get a bit of a bounce here, and then it would maybe tell me that it was more reliable to use Ether dominance than Ether BTC, but that hasn't really happened as yet. But it's still thinking about it, so we can see if we get a bit more follow-up on this, and ETH does gain some strength at this point. Obviously, others dominance and total DeFi dominance, I think, actually no, others dominance more than the other two, the second two, showed that strength, but that was purely through some alts popping, a lot of alts holding and just going sideways, and Bitcoin dropping more relative to these. So now we're still consolidating here. So again, not the most helpful metric is more the point with those comments, that it's all fair and well to say this is going to break out, but this doesn't really help you choose which of the many alts is going to be the one that pops, or the 5%. So obviously sometimes it's clearer hype. People were following that for a long time. Certain Zcash, when they're hitting support and they're bouncing, okay, you can pick some of them, but to pick the random ones, like I had a SIN popped off for me today, and it's gone through, no, not today, but over the last few days, it's gone through 3 alerts, I think, and it's now just hit a yearly supply. But could I have picked that SIN, I can look at it later, look at it in a minute, was the one that was going to pop based on the bottom structure? No. Or it can look like any other, and then it just goes, and then you're either FOMOing in, which I'm not willing to do because I just don't think the market's strong enough, or for me, I'm waiting for the short when it does hit something and it gives me structure for a short. So yeah, anyway, while we're getting a bit of an up move on others' dominance, which is great, it's not overly helpful because the whole market isn't really supporting that. When you look at the others chart, it's dropping. Anyway, total DeFi dominance, that has gained a bit of strength actually since I last looked, and it made a weekly demand come off it, so DeFi is obviously moving a little bit better. Interesting coming up to the channel high here. We need to see a little bit more on this. Maybe if we get monthly demand on this, let me see what the monthly is looking like, 2 monthly, or if we get a 2 monthly demand even. Yeah, if this can get a strong close in the next week, that might be good, but again, we need to see that mirrored on the total DeFi chart, which at the moment for me looks like it's falling off a cliff. So similar here, I guess, as to what I said with the others dominance. Okay, so we've had an up move, so let's say that's from the 18th of May, so that's a month of up, and in that month total DeFi has dropped. So all that's kind of saying to you is that alts are dropping less than Bitcoin, which I guess then should be reflected in these BTC charts. So let's say total ES BTC, again, it's going up. same as dominance. So it's reflected in those charts. But it doesn't help you because you're not going long on things. So yeah, anyway, not very useful charts at the moment. Maybe useful for bounces and for areas for changes of general changes of structure, tops and bottoms. But not necessarily helpful to say, oh, it's alt season, because it clearly isn't alt season. But others' dominance and total DeFi dominance, if you looked at those in isolation, you'd think it was alt season. Totally 100 dominance is showing the opposite, in fact. So we did have the run on that was a bit before, and that did coincide with shitcoins pumping. However, now obviously it had a little bounce, came back down, had another bounce, and it's just making supply. So it could hold from here. Maybe we'll see shitcoins bouncing again. But like I say, I'm not overly confident. And there's a lot of things I can see. So I am bearish on these things, as you know, but because we've had so many hits on support, and I just don't think this is a good high probability long anymore. That was a high probability long. That, this even was a high probability long. Higher lows in here, sure. But now the way this is looking, and I probably can find a fractal of this on a different time frame, because that looks very, very familiar to me. Yes, might make a double bottom. Yes, maybe I'm completely wrong. Yes, maybe it's suddenly going to throw a massive green candle off this mean trend line. I don't know. But my point is always, well, I'd rather wait for that green candle and then we buy the retest. And then maybe you're going to get the move up to here. But rather than just assuming when we're in a downtrend here, which should continue to get to major support, in the bigger picture, we've also made a lower high here. So can potentially go all the way down to there. Drew that very nicely, in fact. But there's things to wait for rather than just FOMOing into longs at a low probability area like this. Anyway, moving on. Ether I pretty much talked about mostly at the beginning, I think, with the low time frame chart. The only difference with Ether is, so I'd had, you may recall, so I've hidden all the old entries off the chart so I can see what I'm doing, but I had an entry there for the possibility of a long on this 4-day demand, and another entry here for the possibility of a long on this 4-day weekly demand. It went a bit deeper, but yeah, gave a little bit of a long, didn't get very far. This one obviously had a bit more of an up move off that zone before coming down further. However, I've always said my preferred entries on this really are the yearly level at 750, or if I'm more optimistic, at least the 3 monthly here. So again, I'd like to see this come down and take out at least that low. Don't always get what you wish for. I don't know, yeah, I can't remember if I talked about this in the last stream or not. I feel like I did, but let's just a quick reminder. One of the things I noticed was a lot of similarities. This is Litecoin, and Litecoin with its 10 to 15 years of sideways. So Litecoin was essentially arguably a wave ahead of Ether, in that Ether had a 2021 bull run, whereas Litecoin didn't. So this is 2018 for Litecoin, and this is 2021. But then I was comparing that to 2021 and 2024, 2025 on Ether. And just sort of saying, okay, again, it's the similar structure that I've talked about, that it comes back down, it bounces, it comes back down, it bounces, it's unable to make a significant breaker for high. And in this case, rather than just dropping through, although it might be heading that direction finally now, it's really just held this support here for a further 5 years. So I was just commenting just similarities to Ether and wondering, if this is just going to be in here similar to Litecoin for however many more years. Just food for thought, but not something to trade off, but just be conscious that, again, the structures aren't really showing that strength that you would want to see. And Ether BTC, when you look at that chart, it just doesn't show that kind of strength. So yeah, again, alerts here for 3-month demand and fulfilling these CME gaps. Apparently I have 2 here, although I looked at the CME chart at the start of the stream and only had 1 on that chart. Anyway, there's some, but they're not really an exact science when it's taken this long to fill them, but potentially 2 CME gaps down here, or 1 uncertain. If we get a further drop on Ether. So we're doing a little bit of a retracement now. The only other thing I hadn't commented on as well also is the indices. We had a nice pump on the Dow earlier today, apparently off the back of Micron. What did the news say? Micron fails, power, Nasdaq, no. there was some other news, maybe it's earlier, about Micron, people being more happy with Micron, and therefore Dow was pumping because of that, apparently, but I don't know anything about Micron, so I can't comment. Anyway, it looks like it's a giant swing failure at this point. But my concern has always been with the indices is that obviously they keep going up and up and up, and they have been for a long time, the US particularly, and also the J225. The other ones are a little less so. But if they do decide to correct, if and when they do decide to correct, I mean, they can go up a really long time before they do, so it's very hard to judge that. But my concern has always been, if and when they do correct, given Bitcoin tends to follow, it doesn't necessarily follow in magnitude, but it follows in direction, normally, at least in New York session. So my concern is when we do have another significant drop like we had in, when's that, February 2026 or February 2025, is February the month for it? Maybe I've missed some trend here that it's always February, I don't know. But when we do eventually have some significant drop, when was this? This is 2022. What's going to happen to Bitcoin if Bitcoin's already going down already? Are we ready for that drop? I don't know. It's still very early. You can, if you look at this in isolation, it looks like, it might retrace all the way back down to here. But you can compare this consolidation to any of these over here, which then takes significantly longer. So this could still mess around here and take significantly longer before it does the same if it was mimicking that. Similarly here, again, not dissimilar to the top, and it still went out and made a new high before dropping. Or, there's similarly like mini corrections that have just continued. So still very, very early days for this. It did make a 5-day supply, I think, on S&P and NASDAQ, but still in 2-weekly demand. If we flip this 2-weekly demand to supply, then maybe it's a week 2-weekly demand. But even here, like over here, we had a 2-weekly supply and we dropped heavily, came back down to weekly demand, and then just went straight back up through the 2-weekly supply. So whether it'll even give us something tradable, if that happens, who knows? Anyway, I'm starting to look a little bit for shorts on these. Sorry, I just had a question on my Telegram, so I will get to that in a minute. Yes, I'm starting to look for shorts on these, but it's still in a very, very cautious, wary way. And then the big concern is if we do get those big drops on S&P and on NASDAQ, whether they're going to give us a massive drop on crypto. So we need to be quite conscious of that. So I'm just reading these messages coming through. Anyway, and the other thing to be aware of also is the dollar. So the dollar for God knows how long. So I've talked about this a few times, but not it's taken so long. So a long time ago now, we hit yearly demand. So in July 2025, we hit yearly demand. We came down, we took it out in when's that? January 2026. And it's still, so we had a long time of sideways here before now we're potentially breaking out. So now the difficulty is, are we breaking out of this range based on these bounces off annual demand? In isolation, sure. However, we've also just hit annual supply. So I'm very unsure at this point, and it's a huge annual supply. It's the same as it's a huge annual demand. So it's a huge annual demand. We took a little dip into it. So there's two things that can happen here. One, it can still respect this annual supply, but it could go significantly higher inside it, particularly given it's had so long consolidating before breaking out. Secondly, it could reject here immediately and then come back down and deeper into this zone and still just hold this sideways range. It's very hard for me to say what I think is most probable. I guess we've got a uptrend for years since 2009, but then we've got a downtrend for more years since arguably the top in 1985. So this is still a lower high, so this still could end up down here in the bigger picture and almost channel downward. But yeah, so it's a little bit of a difficult spot, and I've found FX difficult in general for similar reasons, that lots of things are in major 3-month supply, 6-month supply or demand, the reciprocal, but they've made new opposing supply or demand. So the more recent one tends to be the one I agree with. But then also, when you've got similar to this, when you've got competing, so this we've got the annual demand below and annual supply above, you're just trading basically in a small range until you see some sort of breakout. nothing new on the 3 month. I was just wondering if this is going to make, so it's, you know, if it gets a strong close, it might make a 2 month or a monthly demand in there. So we need to see if that strong close is going to hold. If it's going to hold up there, are we going to take out this high a little bit higher and then just drop back down in the next 5 days before, or not even 5 days actually, is it going to be, no, we're going to get some of next week. Don't exaggerate. So the close will be on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning for the month. So we've still got a bit more PA that can come in here, and it can very easily just close back in range if it wants to. So we'll have to see. But at the moment, this is looking a bit like a, just delete those drawings. It's quite nice when you see it on a small time frame. Delete my drawings. Yeah, so I did have these drawings from previously, because from when I last talked about this, that the prospect that I had alerts for 3 month supply and then annual supply here and the 2 red crosses that have just happened. But there obviously was the prospect that it could go significantly higher in the annual zone, and there are plenty of zones up here that haven't been tested, and there's 2 gaps, so there's a gap there and a gap up there that haven't been filled yet. So very realistic possibility that it still goes all the way to the top of here and it could still respect the yearly supply. Could come all the way up to the top of here and then still drop like a stone from there if it wants. So yeah, anyway, for now, I'm still bullish on this, but cautiously so, because of hitting that annual level. So we need to see what the daily gives us and what the weekly gives us. And if we start to see some demand break and looking like this is going to play out a significant move immediately off the level, or whether this is going to just bounce on demand and get given other pushes higher into the zone. Anyway, 40 minutes and I still haven't got to alts. I really just need to do an alt stream where I don't even talk at all about Bitcoin and Ether, because it's just always too much to say. But at least I can be quick on the majors. So what I've said previously, so I still try to trade a little bit in both directions. I'm being slightly more cautious and not putting in hundreds of entries, so we get hundreds of alerts, we've got hundreds of alerts going off. Some of them have been really nice and easy, you know, just 5-day supply, immediate rejection, drop. Others, I think this one had Ripple had a weekly supply, which I think it rejected. Yeah, it had just an instant rejection off it. So for the most part, the majors are still bearish, and they haven't reached any kind of confluence for where I would like to look for longs. And I think all of that is going to come in conjunction with others hitting the zone that I want others to hit. Or everything's going to bounce too soon. But either way, like I say, that is what I want in order for me to be confident of looking for long entries on alts. TRX obviously is the one that was slightly more bullish. I had an alert go here for looking for longs here, but it was a cautious alert because of the trend line stops, which I talked about in the last stream. It did go down inside, obviously didn't get down to my next entry down the bottom here. It's bouncing off a 5-day demand, taking out some of the stops in that zone that I threw in. They did make a new 4-day demand in there, I think, so I did throw in an alert for a possible long here to maybe get another wave up. Bit more of a retracement on this, given TRX is one of the stronger ones, and it was a clean demand to watch. So you can watch for longs coming off here if the market isn't going to crash any further. Maybe looking at Bitcoin, maybe let Bitcoin have another wave first. Ripple, as I've said, I want the annual level, and even the 61 fibs a bit lower, but I want the annual level on that. BCH it was an interim zone, so this wasn't a zone that I really wanted to, and I just saw some confluence for potential short-term bounce on here, which is why I put that alert in. Again, would like this back down there on that 2-month, 3-month area, so somewhere in the 110 to 130 area, looking for longs on that if we get there. So you can see, so yes, still in zones where we might get bounces, but not confident zones. So I would still like to see a bit of a drop on that, still like to see a big drop on Ripple. Litecoin, I think I might have added close movement alert by mistake. Did. Litecoin, I think I did add this. There's a 3-day demand here, so I think I did add an entry there, maybe since I last posted about this. Again, just the start of this up move, because it didn't properly test it there, so I thought it was an area worth watching, and then also the retest of the annual a little bit lower if it does drop further than that. And then Litecoin, I think, was the only one well, no, Litecoin and TRX. So Litecoin is the one with the aggressive short entry. So that's 2-day supply there. If we get up to a pro-test of that, BCH and Ripple had already tested, so I missed them. And TRX does have a daily supply there and also a daily at the top. So there's kind of 2 possible entries for possible shorts if we're going to get a lower high on this. So TRX we're looking for, is this just a stop hunt swing failure of that high, in which case are we going to go and take out this low, in which case then maybe we're looking for a short re-entry on the retest, daily supply. So that's what to watch for on TRX. New majors first set, so BNB obviously it did that nice little fake out move. Close that so we can see. So did this nice little fake out move, made monthly demand, flipped monthly demand to monthly supply, or will probably flip. I just haven't really wanted to short this purely because it's on this 6-month demand still. I think it's a bigger 6-month and 2-month, 3-month or something inside it. So still just looking for longs on this, and if it falls through it, it falls through it. But I think there's better things to look for shorts on than this aggressively. Although, you know, so it does have a clean 5-day and a weekly supply up there, hasn't been tested. So I toyed with putting an entry, a short entry up there, but then decided, yeah, like I said, there's just better things. And I've got an alert down here for a retest of the yearly level and then potentially taking out these wicks. Just onto that orange line, just looking for a stop hunt through those, maybe in a wick into that area. Again, reiterate all of these charts. You can look at the BTC pairs for better confluence and confidence. ADA was looking for a bounce off this, weekly and 3-weekly demand, get a little one. Again, just didn't get very far, now dropping deeper inside it. There's an old monthly level here, but my next alert was the 2-month. I mean, really, when you've got these significant drops, it's kind of anyone's guess. You're looking for confluence in particular areas, so I'm looking at what zones I've got and where the fibs are. So again, 61 fib on this is a little bit lower, and it does come in close to the 2-month zone, so worth watching this a little bit lower. But any hence 4 crosses, and it could really bounce anywhere. And also it's got daily zones within inside those. It could retrace a lot of this green up move if it wanted to. So yeah, I don't suggest knife catching any of these, and you can DCA if there's things you love about particular charts like ADA if you're super into Cardano for some reason. But for me, the alerts, remember, are just areas that I'm looking for the possibility of longs. So something like this, for example, this is a 4-day chart, but what I'd be looking for is, is it making a daily demand? So in some cases, you'll see me put an aggressive entry for like a move like that, and in this case, it just came back lower. But you're looking for decent structure to get back into longs on the higher time frames. Dogecoin is rapidly approaching 6-month demand here. I don't know if it's been tested already or not. No, it hasn't. So this is a level I wanted to be tested a really long time ago, but it front ran me, I think, on this bounce. Yeah, it's another tough one, similar to Ether. It's got, and ADA. It's got a lower high. Are we going to make a triangle correction, or are we going to come back down into here or into here and back to annual demand, or is it going to make a triangle correction and we're going to start getting some better bull flag to move upwards? I'll show you again quickly on ADA because that was what we had as predicted as ADA a long time ago. So again, you can see those similarities with Doggy there, and Doggy was probably a bit stronger through this section, but it's the same principle, lower high, and in this case it didn't make the triangle. That's what we were looking for. What we were looking for, are we going to make the lower low or zigzag? And in fact, we didn't even really get much of a bounce at all out of the possible triangle. So yeah, anyway, that's what you're looking for on Doggy. Is it going to give you that higher low there? Or is it going to run through, similar to ADA, come down into here, or down into these much significantly lowered zones? And again, on all of these, the way they're looking right now is that the vast majority of the majors are going to make monthly or 2-monthly supply. So you'll need to be a little bit wary of that. And then I will change some of the alerts. So Doggy here, anyway, I did put an alert for weekly supply here. It just missed me. And then obviously plenty of levels above. And when these do bounce, they are going to bounce probably pretty well, because something like Doggy, it has not retested for me about 16 times. Yeah, that's rather frustrating. But so when they do run that then in their favour, it makes it very difficult to know when to short, which can mean you then throw a giant green candle through everything, much like this. Alternatively, what I would hope for, we get a rejection and a short and a long and a short and a long and a short and a long. That would be the perfect world. Sometimes we get that, but other times we just get the giant green candle, which is why you always need to wait for confirmation. So anyway, doggies are just approaching this 6 month now. Obviously, big zone again. Look at that 3 week inside it if it goes a little bit deeper. And then finally on this layout, we've got link. So link, I think I did say in the last stream, that had an 8-hour demand here, so it was one of the ones I put in a more aggressive entry. I really wanted this to hit back here, but I left the alert in anyway, and you can see it's had a little bounce, but then just come deeper inside the zone and just broken the bottom of it. But that was just one of the more aggressive, long potential entries. Might make 1 month, 2 month supply up here, and I do have an alert there for 4-day supply in there already. So I've got a possible short alert, 4-day supply in here as a more aggressive alert, 4-day, and then there's a weekly. And then I've got another alert. So link actually is, it's in a 3 month demand. It did hit here. Again, didn't get very far. But it's just a lot, it's back to that similar, very, very similar to the ether structure. So many of these charts just all really look the same, where they had a rally or a bull run. They didn't come back and test properly into these zones here, slightly front ran. The major demand anyway, but hit a 3-day in the case of link. Got a bounce, but didn't break the high. So in some cases, we've got the lower high here. In other cases, like ether, I want to say Litecoin, but I mean Litecoin from the previous bull run rather than this one. But in some cases, we've got that break of the high, a swing fail of the high, and in other cases, we've got the lower high. And then what we're looking at now on so many of these is a weak demand. And a weak demand can give you a bounce. It can give you a bounce that can make a new all-time high, but it's a weak demand, so it makes it harder to judge. And in this case here, 1 bounce, 2 bounce, 3 bounce, and we're now 4 bounce, and probably locally, I think the 5th bounce on said weak demand. So yes, that might happen, possible. And again, that triangle correction that we talk about. But my bigger concern is that these zones here haven't been tested. So that is really my preferred kind of area to look for longs, down at $4. And that's where I wanted $4. I remember saying I wanted $4 when we hit here, and we didn't get it. So I'm not always right, but I was pretty close to being right here, though, I have to say. And it was very frustrating because I was just patiently waiting this whole time from like May 2022 to when the low was June 2023. So that's a year of sideways that I kept waiting for this weekly or the 2 monthly to be hit. And then when it did eventually run, it left without me, which is extremely irritating. Anyway, moving on. So that's link. So an 8-hour demand that I wouldn't recommend trying to get into longs now on this. That ship has sailed, and then possible shorts should we bounce. I think I've done all on that layout now. Yes, so move on to the next layout. So here, okay, so this is new and exciting. I'll keep that open for now. But anyway, so I dispensed with Dot and with Atom. And I'm going to miss them now. I'm going to want to know what's going on with them, so I'm going to have to look quickly at the end of this if I have enough time. And I brought in Hyper and Zcash, so I did talk about doing that last time, but I haven't actually done it yet. I also talked about removing NEAR and putting in XMR, because XMR is a significantly higher market cap. And if I was to do call these majors based on market cap, then XMR should be in there and NEAR should not be. However, I've left NEAR for now, so let's start with NEAR. I left NEAR for now because it had just hit when I was talking about doing it. I think it was just, let me think, that should win. Yeah, I think this alert, I just talked about this alert. Then when I set a new alert for the break of the trend line, I set an alert here for the retest of daily supply once it had broken the trend line. So yeah, on the day I switched with Zcash and Hype, I didn't want to take this out because I wanted to see whether we were going to have a play out of this. And we have, but again, still trying to hold demand here. And I also threw in another possibility of a 12-hour and there's a 5-day supply there as well now. and also slightly front run this one. I've got 3 alerts on that, seemed a little bit unnecessary. I'll take that one out for now. I had the wrong information in it, that's why. Take that out. Up there in case we need it again later, but yeah, still looking for shorts on this and short bias being in 3 months supply. The concern and the risk on this was that it has left these trend line stops here, but at the moment it's still holding the local supply. In a perfect world, it'll come down into here and then go up for that next wave, but it might just hold this demand in here, so be a little bit careful on that. While I've got the alert there, it's not great if it swing fails this low here, and it's still holding, so that's quite a significant, that green level is quite a significant support from previously, and it is trying to hold that area. What's that, 1.8? So we can see a little bit more on this. Then Solana. So was, I think only Solana and maybe Atom hit long entries at the last lows. But Solana was one of them anyway, so, and it had a decent bounce. I know it was ADA, that was it. So this had a better bounce, I think, than ADA, but still didn't really get to any significant supply. It's now back in 2-day demand, and again, I was toying with the idea of having a long re-entry on this, but then Bitcoin was just looking, I think I only looked at this yesterday, and Bitcoin was looking so ropey, and just thought, no, I'm not gonna look for longs right now. Could hold here, but next alert would be a little bit lower, and still a fairly big risk that this is just going to dive off a cliff. Still a little bit of support here. You can watch for the higher low here, and maybe that will hold for a decent move. And then what else? So I already had a weekly supply alert set on this. It's a bit choppy, so I don't love it, which is why it's black. And then there's a daily here that just wasn't tested properly on this. So if this is going to be an accumulation, manipulation, and then distribution, then the possibility is that this will happen. So that's why, and particularly because this has sort of trend line stops through here a bit better, this makes this maybe not necessarily a reliable alert. But yeah, we shall see. Whether this is over is probably just going to depend on whether the Bitcoin's over. If this is going to come down a bit lower, or even, again, just too many areas that this could bounce here. There's 12 hours, 8 hours, there's daily, there's another daily, there's another daily, and then really you want, ideally, this to come back down into monthly, 2 monthly, 3 weekly demand down here to look for your longs. What else and how are we doing for time? 58 minutes. I like to keep it under an hour because then I can upload it on TikTok. But I think I may not achieve that. Or at least I might have to cut the beginning off if I'm going to achieve that, or speed it up or something. But yeah, I don't want to rush too much through the last bit, so I won't rush for that. So, hype. Somebody asked me about this the other day, so it was a bit of a risk on this. I think they were asking me, they were wanting to long when we were coming up on this last green stretch, maybe just on the retest here, and I kind of said, well, but between, it did make a 2 weekly demand here, but then it's also swing failed the high, so for me it just was not really in an area you want to look for anything on it, so I just said leave it. I had an alert for a lower high. I think there was a daily supply in here, but obviously it just took out the high again. But yeah, I think I said to the person that you can short off this daily supply if you want, but it's only going to short down. Your target really is back in this 2 weekly demand. If we see the weakness in this 2 weekly demand, or if this starts to come back through, then we can look for the bigger short. But while it's still here, then this potentially can still just be a sideways consolidation for another move, not dissimilar to this. So that's hype for now. The risk on this is if it does collapse is, yeah, there's lots of demand, but it could run through everything. And that is what we're seeing quite a lot of alts like this giant drop. So that's hype. And then Zcash. So a lot of people calling this all-time high. Be conscious, Zcash is not an all-time high. This is so if you look at Zcash US dollar on Bitfinex, it does have this original starting candle, or even if you ignore the starting candle, this 2017 move shows this is not an all-time high. But if you look at Binance, it looks like it's at all-time high, but it's missing 3 years of PA on that. So I've got the zones drawn in. Anyway, so yeah, we did get we got shorts and longs off this. So yeah, I've been more short biased while we're getting this consolidation, and now we've had one drop down, we've had the lower high. Are we going to get a further drop? And then we've got annual demand down here. So I'll see a little bit more of this. I'll start to get more active on this, like I am with the other majors, putting more entries or more alerts in as I get more familiar with the chart. But for now, yeah, we had long went through and then hit this weekly retest down here, and then retest for a short entry off 3-day supply up there, and that's the sort of most immediate. But I'll start to get more active on this and just like hope again in the bigger picture that this is not going to just play out. And just go back to the original chart. There's this giant range where we've just ranged up, and now we're just going to come back down to the bottom of the range. Again, look at the BTC pair for help on this if you need to. So that's that on the majors. So very exciting to get the new majors. I don't know if anybody's interested in Atom and DOT anymore. I can see that's dropped, but yeah, I should probably just do a final comment on these. Because I did talk about them in the last stream. But yeah, so I had an alert here on daily demand on Atom in the hope that we'd get a move up to this entry in supply, but obviously that didn't. It just went sideways for a few days and then dropped lower. Still got the alert here for all-time low on that. And is that all-time low? Let me just check. No, I think that's not all-time low. No, it's low of the weekly demand and the wick, but could go a lot lower for all-time low. And for DOT, which is at all-time low, also that's obviously come crashing down. And I think, again, I was hoping I did have an aggressive re-entry on this for the daily that coincided with the break of this low, but it hasn't even gone up to test that, and it's just dropped further. So it's no bad thing. I think that these two are being removed from the majors because, they're clearly not majors anymore. Just putting them in the wrong place. They're clearly not majors anymore. Anyway, we are 1 hour and 3 minutes. I did want to look more at alts, but maybe I won't. Maybe I will just do another stream tomorrow on alts and try and get my act together to get 2 days in a row. That would be shocking. And then, because it really needs it, I need to talk about the sort of 6 month and the 3 month and things like that, and just the pros and cons and the difficulties we're having with alts at the moment. Some good, and some good and some bad. I'm still getting loads of alerts coming through. So if you are in my channels, you will be familiar and used to all this. All the alerts come through and the crosses define where I've alerted supply, demand, etc. Sin was the one I was going to talk about, wasn't it? So in some cases we just get these crazy runs. But at this point in time, it had run through. This is a nice example, actually, of that accumulation manipulation distribution thing. It had made monthly supply, so I actually had a more aggressive alert on this one, and it just went straight back through it. And yeah, it really is that simple. It's accumulation, manipulation, and then distribution in a grand scale. And it had left stops throughout. But can you judge? I mean, these alerts, I believe, were fairly major. They'll be like weekly or monthly zones. And if they just go through, that's why you just have to wait for confirmation. I always say when something is aggressively going up for multiple days, then you should wait for 12-hour or 8-hour supply. If it's going up for just 1 day, then you can potentially do lower time frame reversal to get in the shorts. But when something's going up this long, the chances are it's going to consolidate longer, and it will, for the most part, they will give you an 8 or 12-hour re-entry. But yeah, anyway, if you're able to judge these, please do let me know, because I would love to learn something if there is some way of judging these. But for me, there is no way I can ever judge, which alt is going to do this versus all the millions of others that just don't, that just do some sideways. I'll show you BDX as well. Actually, then you've got these ones to be concerned with, which just throw a massive dump through everything. And it's had 6 month and yearly demand by the looks of it, and 3 month demand, and it's gone through 3 alerts. It's now come back up and finally hit where I would have wanted to board. But again, can you judge those? Not particularly easily. M was the other one. I stopped M on him, but I removed it. I think I've removed it, but I'll stop for now anyway. Other things to watch out for are things hitting annual demand. So we've got Theta has come into an annual demand. We've got ACH, I think, also came into an annual demand. So yeah, be conscious of those. ARPA looks like it might be in one as well, although it might be right at the bottom of it already. Be significantly down inside it. But yeah, just be very conscious of your high time frames and be very, very conscious of the 1, 3, and 6 month supply, supply or demand, but the 1, 3, 6 month closes that are going to happen in 5 days' time. Anyway, I hope that is useful. Please hit me up if you have any questions. I will try and do an alt stream tomorrow afternoon. So if you have any requests, throw them at me in Telegram or on comments to this. I'll try and check them. And yeah, we'll come on stream tomorrow and say hi. I hope you have a good evening. Ciao.